So, welcome everyone to another episode of CC Youth Tube.
Take number 7.
Yeah, really, and we're cracking up too much. This is Jonah Brenner, Jennifer Brenner, Jacob Brenner, and Sammy Brenner.
We just met.
As you know, I have 4 boys, and Jonah is my 3rd son, and Jacob is my 2nd son.
And
3rd son, but number 1 favorite.
And my favorite. He's my favorite. And Sammy is Jacob's
favorite.
wife. Yes.
Favorite wife, does that mean you got more than one?
No, I just said favorite. You said
okay.
wife.
Just checking.
See, this is why I'm your favorite. We're always on the same page.
Yes, that's true. I think as long as every one of my sons feels like they're my favorite, I'm doing something right. So.
Yeah, but we might feel that way, but I know it's that way, so.
Well, that's just your opinion.
My opinion is based on facts, baby.
Well, it's just a stone cold fact. You need a haircut.
It's just a stone cold fact that you need to wax your upper lip.
Lots
Family,
of love.
right? We love each other.
Lots
I
of
swear.
opinions.
Lots of opinions.
Oh.
So we've been talking a lot about, we realized opinion, and it can be kind of murky trying to discern what is opinion and what is fact, especially in today's day and age. So just for the context of this conversation, we're using the textbook definition of opinion, and that is a view or a judgment that's been formed on something that's not necessarily based on fact or knowledge. We're talking about something that we believe to be true, but we have not necessarily gone to the efforts to discern it and weigh it against truth, against empirical evidence to know that this is widely held as fact, right? Does that make sense? Is everyone okay with that definition?
Mm-hmm. Good.
Cool.
Versus
Versus a fact, which is going to be repeatable evidence. It's empirical evidence, or truth is something that is known and can be repeated time and time again, right? We're talking about a scientific type definition.
And also in the case of us as believers, using the Bible to also find those facts and truth versus that opinion.
Facts don't change, but opinions can.
Yeah, and a lot of this conversation centers around trying to discern what information you get is opinion and what information is truth. And really that delineation is about what information that's being thrown at you is viewed or knowledge that is just formed without really weighing the other side, right? We've never put it to the torture test to see if it falls short or not.
And we thought it would be a really good opportunity for us to share some of our personal methods and standards that we use to understand and discern opinion from truth. And there's a lot of topics that this can come in on. And I think keeping that in mind, I'm going to pass to Jennifer Brenner, because she's got, a bee in her bonnet.
Well, maybe. Yeah, so we want to just lightly touch on a few areas where we're trying to, how we discern our methods. And Sammy had a really great question when we were setting this film up. It's like, okay, we've told everybody that they need to use the Bible as the source of truth, correct. But we're also going to try to give some practical methods on finding, discerning truth from opinion in other arenas and other areas of life. And so one of them that we always talk about that comes up is science and evolution. And we just remember that Chris Bailey came and talked to us a lot about dispelling the myth, the false idea that science and the Bible are in opposition to one another, and that's not true. It's very clear that the Bible and science are together, and we know that the scientists of old were all Christians. So we can put that one aside, and then one little thing I want to say is that getting into methods of how you determine these things. Jen Wilkin in teaching Genesis. Jen Wilkin's a Bible study teacher that I love to follow. People are always asking her, what is your view of the earth? Are you young, old, young earth or old earth. And she will never disclose what she believes because she feels like it's counterproductive. She says it's not gonna be helpful to the conversation. People will stop listening to me. Just like when you tell people who your political candidate is, they will stop listening to you if they don't agree with you. So she will not tell people. And she said, but I will say that if you are only in your camp and you've never read any other account and never looked at the other side, then you're not really that strong in your opinion and your view until you look at other views. So that's kind of what we want to talk about, Sammy. When we're talking about methods about forming your opinions and based on the Bible and all the foundations, what is something that you would like to talk about? Which arena? Science, politics?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked a lot about social media and how much there is on social media. There's a lot. I mean, we could talk about it for hours, really. But I think that one thing that I do is I try to make sure that I don't unfollow or cancel or whatever people that disagree with me, because I like to see people that are posting things that maybe I'm like recoil at. And then I want to read that article, and I want to evaluate that news source, if it's a news or if it's a science source or whatever topic. I mean, politics or like you said, science or things that are happening like about the Bible or about all the culture things that are going on, or should this celebrity be promoting this thing, or should they be sharing this thing, or whatever. There's a lot of stuff on social media, but I would say that I try to make sure that I don't filter my feeds into things that I only agree with. Because, like, I do have a lot of friends that are believers that are posting a lot of, like, Christian sources, so that's great, and I need to see that stuff too. I also have a lot of friends that maybe agree with me on culture things, and I want to see those things as well. It's fun to see things that you're like, oh, that's awesome, but also that's not all that I want to see. And so just making sure that as I'm looking on social media, which I also try to do maybe on a more limited basis, it's that there's a wide range of viewpoints that I'm able to look at. And and I think what we're talking about too is that I mentioned it in the previous our filming before, I don't know how it's going to come out, but that there are certain things that I'm like not willing to budge on about the Bible being true, and so this is not really talking about that. I'm talking more about things that are opinions and that are maybe not, it doesn't say in the Bible like, here's what you should think about celebrities or whatever. Like, we just have general guidelines. And so just making sure I'm not narrowing my view of what there is out there and getting things from a lot of different sources. So that's a little bit about social media. I know that that's a big part of all of our lives and continuing to grow and grow. And so from there, then we're seeing a lot of information. And so how do we, Jonah, you touched on the difference between truth and opinion, and how do we start to kind of sort through that and sift through what we're seeing and hearing?
I think there's a lot of different ways we can do that. I think the one that really jumps out to me and the one that I always go to starts with when Jesus tells us what the greatest command is, right? And it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and with all your soul. And he splits the human being into 4 different categories. And to me, that's how I make sense of a lot of different things. I can interact with a lot of things out there with just my mind without being emotionally involved. And I can interact with things in an emotional way without really intellectually engaging with it. And so to decide if something's opinion or not, or if I agree with it, or if it's truth, it's nice to be able to kind of filter that and set that aside. Oh, I disagree with this person, and they said something that made me angry. Oh, well, I'm going to start by looking at that from maybe an emotional perspective, and then look at it from an intellectual perspective. Am I just angry that they said something to me because I feel like I'm above correction? Or are they actually right and I'm wrong, intellectually speaking, right? Because what I feel is really different from what I think. And we can see that we're beings that we can be in all of those areas, right? I can think something about a topic. I can feel something about it. I can believe something about it too. And I think that gets more into the heart of things, right? Like what I really latch onto, what I really want to be true. And all of that is kind of held together with the soul of who I am, and that kind of holds together where I've been in the past, where I've interacted with things, where I'm going, right? Like, I'm a being, and I've dealt with certain things before. I've had people come at me and say, you're wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're, this, that, the other, X, Y, Z. Well, if I don't have a soul, that's just a moment. That's just a moment in time that's suspended and not connected to anything else. But I'm a being that has memories. I'm a being that can go backwards and remember other moments where I've been maybe angered by that or been corrected. And so I think for me, when I really question whether something's opinion or truth, it kind of goes into a category of that kind of four-prong thing. Because it's much easier, I think, to assess it. When I get really, really angry about something, it can be harder for me to think about whether it's right or not, because I'm so angry about it. And I have to be willing to set that aside and pick up the intellectual piece. And all of that needs to be done, I think, with other people. I really benefit from that. I constantly, Proverbs talks about it all the time. About the fool and the wise. And one of the characteristics of the wise man is that he has safety in the counsel of many, right? I think the biblical worldview that we have shows us that it's not good for us to be alone, right? When God first makes Adam, before any of the fall happens, he says something's not good, and that's that Adam is alone. And so it makes him a partner, someone for him to be with, a companion for him. And I think we are supposed to be in relationship and dialogue about all these things. So for me, I don't let myself think about things in a vacuum. If I'm really wrestling with something, I have to go to someone I really trust, that I really, really respect their opinion on, which, again, that takes a little while for them to get to. I don't let just anybody speak into my life. I don't grab someone off the sidewalk by the lapels and say, yo, bro, what do I need to do with my life? What needs to be different, right? Like, you have to earn the right to get to know me. Because it's hard for me. I can't do that with everybody. I can't just open everybody into my life and say, can you guide me on this? Would you share your perspective with me on this? And so I have to have people that I can trust, that I can be close with, that I will do what they say. Or at least wrestle with it. And I give them that permission, and I give them that access. And I think in wrestling with that with other people, truth sustains a lot easier in that process than something that's just opinion, right? And that's why I think it's important to have other perspectives. That's kind of my go-to method, but Jake?
I mean, I would say that I don't typically stray too far from that. It takes I would say a large portion of, at least something I've learned about myself, is it takes a large portion of humility to not cut people off. I think our tendency is to want to recoil when something doesn't sit well with us. We're easily put into situations where we're scandalized or frustrated or just angry about that someone would question us, because from our own perspective, of course, our intentions are the best that they can be, right? From my perspective, I'm doing everything right unless I examine myself with a critical lens. And so it is being able to discern what your professor is telling you. And, practically speaking, in terms of school, like, you might have some things that are just non-issues that, in terms of the way you interact with your professor, your teacher, your whoever, you might have to just be strong and be bold, and still respectful, and just agree to disagree. It's not going to hurt you to have that extra knowledge of where they're coming from, of what their worldview is, so long as you are ironclad in your own worldview. And I would say ironclad being you've carefully examined and discerned and wrestled with the things that you've come to, and you're not just regurgitating an opinion that you saw on a social media post, or my friend thinks this is true and so I'm just going to jump on that bandwagon. I think we're called to not only follow Jesus strongly, but we're called to know the things of his character. We're called to be able to recite his word. We're called to be strong in that, and to not be well-read and well-versed and prepared for those things is not really setting yourself up for success in that regard. So practically with your professors, maybe you don't always see eye to eye with them, but you can always take those things like you're saying that someone brings to you or presents and bring them to someone you trust, someone who's a mentor to you, who has strong depth of knowledge that can maybe see things from multiple perspectives, and then kind of go from there.
How about
good.
using particular words? Just to downright just look at a post and say, okay, you're using a word that's a loaded, what we used to call loaded words.
Sure.
What's your, as far as being able to find out something.
Yeah, I
Or
think.
to discern something. A loaded word. If you can just pick out a loaded word on somebody's post or article.
Being able to
Yeah.
recognize when people are just trying to get you to think emotionally versus all of the ways.
And that gets muddied in trying to discern relationships with people, right? Being able to discern whether someone is. You're trying to discern, what's the word I'm looking for? You're trying to basically decide whether it's just the syntax of what they're saying or if it's the intention behind it. Because a lot of people are not really well versed and are not able to articulate opinions in a way that don't bleed through that personal preference. It takes a very precise individual to share an opinion on something without betraying personal motivations. We all have this, it's called confirmation bias. We all have this tendency to want to see our own opinions come to fruition. And that's why research and science particularly is really difficult to produce, because we start off with this idea and we have this emotional attachment. That's our little baby, this thing we want to see grow, and it's like we've worked hard for it, so of course we want to see it succeed. And confirmation bias is when we let other things that might not be pertinent to the situation kind of feed into that. And so I think we do that in our posting and our conversations with people. We say things that are maybe a little more emotionally loaded, they're maybe a little more divisive, because we want to skew the situation to find success, to find ourselves be validated in our opinion. And it's hard to do that in relationship with people, to discern, is this person really think that, or is this really true? Or are they just or are they unable to filter their own opinion?
So would you say if you see something and you feel a strong emotion, maybe you should think about it? I think that's
Sure.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit of being introspective and knowing what things are going to affect you in a certain way, and a little piece of self-awareness. And we're starting to get into a lot of lofty topics that are really tough. Self-awareness is so hard for a lot of people, and I think that the more time that we can distract ourselves with our busy culture, right? Everybody's always busy. I'm so busy. The first thing you say when someone's like, how have you been? Just busy, we are distracting ourselves and we're not as introspective as a culture as maybe people used to be. And so we don't know, we're not as self-aware, we're not as able to Jonah's talking about emotional versus intellectual. A lot of people, what you're saying, can't do that. But I think that first, if we can know that about ourselves and know I'm having an emotional reaction to this versus I'm able to separate it,
If left to my own devices, I'll be right about everything.
Well,
because
and-
I'll self-justify everything.
Yeah.
I'll find a way to make what I think be true if someone's not holding me accountable.
And I'm saying that out of super personal experience, because I get very emotionally attached to my ideas. And I get super passionate about them. And I have to work really hard to not do that. Yeah, stop making that face at me, okay? We know it. I've accepted that I'm an emotional person, and I get emotionally tied to ideas, and it's true. And so.
There's not a non-emotional person,
Well, okay, I'm a highly emotional person.
Splitting hairs here.
Yeah.
And I have to be really careful about not letting myself get emotionally tied to
Hurt my feelings by saying
opinions.
that.
Yeah. How dare you? But yeah, so I don't know. It's just, there's a lot there.
Yeah. So, to thank you everybody for sharing your different perspectives, and we hope that we're kind of giving you guys practical ways to discern opinion and to build correct opinions say.
Well, in my correct opinion, there's no better way than to use the Bible.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So we've talked a lot about the Bible, and so my practical advice on all of this is to get a good Bible reading plan. And well, you could read Proverbs every day of the week. Today's, I'm not going to tell you the day because I don't know. I don't want to say what the day is, but whatever day of the month it is, that's the proverb you read. And then or the Psalms, and get on a good Bible reading plan and just read the Bible and just get it in your life, get it in your mind. So that's what I want to say. So I appreciate everybody being here.
What's 40-os and 40-os? 80-os.
Oh, that's good.
Wait, you're filming? I thought we were just talking.
That's it. Bye.